Here we go. Welcome back to a lecture from the inner place and inner standing of me, DJ Dab, aka The Last Dragon. Peace to all of my cosmic kinfolk tuning in. Maybe you've been here before, but maybe it's your first time. I want to welcome you to my YouTube channel. And first and foremost, preface that I hadn't planned on doing this topic on a YouTube channel. In fact, the lost science of reincarnation, as told by a master dragon, I planned on sharing it with just a few specific people. But in hindsight, after talking to an amazing goddess, I was kind of nudged along the way, like, go ahead and get this information out the door. So here we are, and thank you for joining me. This is going to be one of the longest presentations I've done on this channel. In fact, I'll probably duplicate this to the Occupy Your Third Eye channel, which is another YouTube channel I run, where a lot of the longer lectures that aren't on this channel are housed. Well, let me get right in. Don't want to bore you to death with intro and preface information, but we're going to jump right in, and we're going to learn a little bit about this beautiful thing called the lost science of reincarnation. And we're going to figure out along the road why it's been lost. Why has it been so hard for people to get back into a science? Okay? Well, it's because we have major misunderstandings of wisdom, because there are religions on the planet that teach dogma, right? So I'll start with, I was researching for this lecture lots and lots of Hindu masters, lots and lots of doctors from India, lots and lots of archaeologists from India, monks and spiritual teachers, and listening to them explain for their culture what reincarnation means, right? And the dogma behind most reincarnation is that you're born here because you chose this body, and you're a parent, you chose them. This is the current dogma, right? You chose them, you came here, and you're working out some karmic resolutions and revolutions to eventually escape the cycle of birth. That's the short version of what the belief system is. Well, that's a little bit, far removed from what the science of it really is. And we're going to go into the depths of the waters and pull out the realness of what reincarnation is and the practice of it. Yes, it can be practiced, and it should. I highly say that this lost information could change the planet forever and a day. All right, I'm getting a little poetic. But okay, the true essence of a soul is infinite across all religions. They all respect that. And I'm talking about religions, not science or atheism. But religions believe that you are eternal in many ways, and you either are here once, according to Christianity, you die, but your soul spins up into this place that is before heaven, before Jesus comes back, and the trumpet sounds, and all those dead spirits rise from the planet. You dig what I'm saying? So, therefore, the soul didn't die, right? You're not gone. But that's Christianity. I'm sure it's very similar in Islam. And here are just 2 or 3 of the major religions of the planet that have a dogmatic system that blocks the understanding of the science of that spiritual thing, the soul. It's so easy to grasp. I mean, if we're looking at this from a metaphysical perspective, what you believe internally is what you're able to achieve. Now, that's subsequent to the laws of the universe, which you have no bearing over, And you can then lose what are the truths of how the universal laws work, playing a dogmatic game of oopsie daisy, I'm crazy, I feel like I've been here before. You know what I mean? There is something to be said about why what we think and believe, only leaves us at a certain state of mastery over this amazing human body. Now, a lot of times religions, talk in parables, they do storytelling. Jesus did a lot of that in the Bible because it works and it's just down to earth. It doesn't have to be high science talk. It doesn't have to be a lot of special words you have to go learn and master. It can be just told in stories, and in my case, I'm gonna tell some stories, but I'm gonna move quite fast as far as explaining things in a very beautiful visual language for you. Because with all the common teachings from Christianity, Islam, Buddha, Baha'ism, Hinduism, Sikhism, you know what I mean? We could unify the understanding under these umbrella names and bring back a perennial knowledge, a perennial wisdom, and a perennial practice that could, at this point, start a revolution on the planet. Let's begin. All right, I'm on my main slide now. And we're going to talk a little bit about the soul in quantum physics. Okay? Now, this diagram here is designed so that we can kind of go in order. We will be talking about solar sciences, the pinprick of the soul, the unit of sound in the fractal, a DNA backbone structure, its synchronicity with the soul, planetary and solar push and pulls, and its synchronicity with a soul's pattern, how this translates into epigenetics. This guitar here will represent a woman, and you can see that there is a womb here where I've written spiritual tones in the mother's womb. And in here is what's going to happen, some special stuff, okay? Then I've also got, cute little you reborn. Hey, look, there's you, whatever you are, man, woman, child. We don't know what you are yet, but, and I'm going to talk a little bit about water and the covalent bonds and the watery rebirth from a watery tomb. So, now as we're getting this, the concept of the soul as an energetic value has to be decoded. What is the energetic value of a soul? Okay, well, it starts with everything at the top of this diagram. It starts very simple with an understanding that you have a inner dragon in you, okay? And this inner dragon has to be influenced by everything you see on this chart. Everything you see on this chart in order for it to match itself as a soul when we're talking about the practice of reincarnation. You too are a dragon. You aren't calling yourself a dragon because you associate that with Chinese mythology, English mythology, the devil, whatever dogmatic block you have on it. But in my case, when I'm talking about the dragon, I'm talking about my soul or your soul and its fiery energy that is what animates you into action. It's what animates you as a living embodiment, an action of string theory. And we're going to get into some string theory without going into the scientific, principles of string theory, because that's a very deep metaphysical study and what is that called? It's a science. What is it called? Physics. But this will be a way that we're talking about tuning. We'll be talking about resonant frequencies. We'll be talking about why the dragon never changes. Okay? So, if you're prepared to take this journey, enjoy this little slide presentation as I go down the line. But, to get back to what we're really getting down to is when we talk about the concept of a soul and its energetic value. We know that energy cannot be created, nor can it be destroyed. And I'm gonna pull up some what's his name, Terrence Howard video later, where he's gonna talk about some of that. He gets into a lot of the things I kind of described right here on the screen. And then I'm also gonna visit Billy Carson's video, where he recently talked about a little reincarnation. I figured I'd pick some brothers. Gotta have some soul up in this piece, because I was about to go with Indian people and use some of their videos for reference, but I'll do it with my brothers. Okay, so what are we really getting into? We're getting into an analogy, again, a story, and I'm gonna talk about the plucking of a guitar string for a lot of this lecture, because it's a great way to illustrate a soul's frequency. All right. Ooh, I just got frequencies all through my head. I don't usually have that happen in a YouTube video recording and have to stop and say that. But I mean, it's very high frequencies, like way up here. Anyway, that's something I deal with on a constant, daily basis, being a powerful psychic. So, what is the first thing we're going to look at here? We're going to look at solar science, okay? And then we're going to look at the pinprick of the soul. Those are the first two things I think we should really discuss. So what is it in solar science that, really moves us? Well, every object with mass exerts a gravitational pull on every other mass. So you got the sun in the center of a solar system, large planets on the outside, smaller planets on the inside, and they're all on this tug-of-war pull. The strength of this pull depends on the mass of the objects involved and the distance between them. Although planets like Jupiter and Mars exert gravitational forces on Earth, these forces are minuscule compared to the gravitational pull of the Earth experiences from the sun and the moon. Hence why I have a zodiac chart over there in the left-hand corner. It's not an accurate zodiac chart, but it is a zodiac chart, right? On a smaller scale, tidal forces, which are differential forces, where one part of the body experiences a different gravitational pull compared to another part of the body due to varying distances from the gravitational source, can also be thought of as microgravity environments. For example, the gravitational pull of the moon affects the oceans on the Earth more than the land, because of their different distances to the moon, which leads to tides. The Earth, the tiny little moon, it pulls on the oceans, there's a bulge. Then as it moves around the planet and the planet is rotating itself, that bulge follows the gravitational pull of the moon. Simple as that. Now, why did I bring this up? Because if you're keeping a reference point on everything on this slide, it's going to add to the entire big picture. Because what you have in what I just described is the ability for gravity to change something as small as a water molecule and pull it and make a whole body of water pull itself closer to the shore or further away from the shore. And you, my dear listener, are also mostly water. So gravity has an amazing effect on your body, all over your body. You get gravitational pull. You move with the moon with your water. You mostly move with the moon. Your water in your body respects the gravitational pull. The sun as well, as described right here in this. But these are the basic concepts that if you start to understand it, then you might know why I have a zodiac chart up there, because the moon will be in a specific place in the sky when you're born, and the sun will be in a specific place in the sky when you're born. Now, all of these things are solar aspects, okay? And these amazing data points that are created by all the heavenly bodies in the sky onto our little tiny planet Earth, okay, are significantly profound in the synchronization to your specific spark frequency. Now, I guess you want to know a little bit more about your spark frequency while you're enjoying these graphics. Well, here's your spark frequency, right? Coming out of the sun. Now, why does your spark frequency come out of the sun? Sun, it's mad easy, because what has the most gravity in our solar system? The sun. So when you die as a person, when I die, right? When you die, when everybody passes away and they lose this DNA shell, the soul energy is pulled to the closest gravitational source that is very attractive. So the one that's the most attractive to the soul when it leaves the body is the sun. It's the most attractive place for the soul. It wants to go back there. Look at how English even put it into a double entendre, where you have the solar system, you have a soul. There you go. I'm not even going to go into some of the other references, but a day on Mars is called a soul. But anyway, so with that into account, and if you're grasping that the moon can be in the, let's say, the constellations over there near Scorpio, you know, and then the sun could be over here in like a Taurus or Pisces place, right? Or Aries place. And that's a specific place in the sky for these two bodies to be pulling on the planet, causing the water to go in a specific direction. Well, all of those forces create a unit of sound in the fractal space, which a lot of mystics call Akasha. But I'll call it the fractal, because you can understand fractal is a very beautiful repeating pattern based on like a golden ratio. And a golden ratio was just discovered. It's an amazing number that makes it so that flowers, trees, plants, wings of a bird, the feathers on the wings all grow uniformly without crowding each other out. And it's just a very simple number. I wish I'd put it into one of my slides, but I didn't. So it's the golden ratio, which is why every string on the guitar is gold, okay? Now, that unit of sound is very much akin to a pinprick on a guitar string, okay? That specific unit of sound of your soul's frequency is equivalent to a tiny pinprick. Like, this is a needle, baby, and it's pricking that string right there. At the head of that pin, it can only be but so long. So I imagine that, or so wide and so long. I imagine that the pinprick is at the atom level, okay? And with that assumption, the needle's head is 1 nanometer in size. And we can make more precise estimate of how many different tones could be theoretically plucked on a guitar string. And here's how we calculate it. So if your soul is just going to represent one little pinprick of a guitar string, and the length of a guitar string is typically 650 millimeters, that converts to 650 billion different units of a specific fractal that can be generated. And I'm not exaggerating enough. That's not sensitive enough. There's actually way more souls that can be generated now that you're looking at what I'm saying, right? And there's even 4 more strings on the guitar. So how many souls could be stored in that kind of understanding? If that is the array of souls and how we're organized here in this entire universe, not just our little tiny baby planet, baby boy and baby girl, grasshopper, you're thinking too small. I'm giving you an infinite understanding of the wisdom of the soul. That's an amazing amount of souls that can come off of one string, right? So, in essence, what I'm telling you here is that we don't even have that many people on the planet right now. But maybe we have enough souls for animals. Maybe we have enough spark energy for the insects. We have enough spark energy for the elephants. We have enough spark energy for the sea creatures. But I'm going to choose things that have an anatomy that represents a awareness of the planet on a bigger scale than just themselves. those individual bodies receive the same pinprick, but on a different note system, on a different string, right? So if humans are coming from the A string, then animals can come from this string, okay? And then planetary bodies can come from this string, okay? And then sun bodies and star bodies can come from this string. I'm going from the macrocosm to the microcosm, microcosm to the macrocosm. I misspoke. But that's why I chose the guitar, because this is what allows for the best representation of how many conscious things out there have souls. So what did I just say then? The sun definitely has a soul. It is its own awareness, okay? But you don't have to worship this awareness, and it doesn't ask for worship like the ancient Egyptian mythologies have been spun, which is now miscued and taken out of real past context for what it really was. Okay? Now, if you understood the pinprick concept, we have all these amazing souls that are coming out of the sun, right? They create a unit of sound and a fractal, and now we've got some kind of pattern that can be recognized about you, me, individually, okay? But what is it about the structure of that fractal that has to now be taken back into a body? Well, that's where we have to do a lot of the heavy lifting here as far as amazing understanding of this scientific method, okay? You have a name, I have a name, we all have a name. We're called that name while we're probably just a zygote in the womb. I'm not a zygote, excuse me. Let's say the first trimester and second trimester, whenever the parents discover the sex of the baby, they might come up with a name and start speaking that name to the womb of the baby. You know, that's cute. I can imagine that happens a lot. You know, but for a lot of other people, the name isn't spoken to you until you're out of the womb, and then you start getting called a specific name, which is a frequency, right? And that frequency, the pitch of the sound, which is determined at the rate of vibration of your vocal cords, it's creating this feedback loop. This feedback loop, the unit of sound and the pinprick of the soul. So there's also the amplitude, which is the loudness of the sound, which is determined by the size of vibrations. And then there's the timbre, the quality or color of the sound, which is influenced by a specific way the vocal tract modifies the sound produced by vocal cords. Someone would have to call me during this lecture. All right, it's just my brother in Australia. I'll get back to him. So what I'm telling you is, then if you have frequency, amplitude, and timbre coming out of someone's vocal cords, you're causing a specific vibration of air molecules. And those air molecules, when they vibrate, they can get translated into water. Okay? Well, yeah, that's pretty easy to understand, because Dr. Emoto did an experiment where he had several jars of water, labeled them with specific words from love, joy. In fact, I'll just pull up my brainwave chart first. You know, bliss, irritation, love, anger, peace. And when the words were said to jars of water with the labels on them, and then those jars were frozen, the water comes back with a specific crystal structure. Bliss created amazing snowflake-looking crystals. The word irritation created globular-looking crystals. Love created amazing fractal crystals. Anger created disorganized, incongruent crystals. Peace created a fluent solar flower sacred geometry of crystals in the water. So what are we getting at here? This sound goes into water, matching a synchronicity with a soul pattern. So, where am I at on this slide? I'm now down here with synchronicity with the soul pattern. What you're now getting is, back to our solar slide. No, excuse me. Let me get to the one with the names. A mother is sitting here holding a new formed cellular being in her body. And it's creating its DNA based on a donation from the father and a donation from the mother. Well, that's where the DNA's backbone is coming from. For the most part, that's what gets inherited right away. Now, there's also going to be traits up and down the DNA ladder that are represented by the other 4 proteins. I think it's ATCG. And those things are just going to encode some basic physical structures that have been inherited. Okay? It's going to also have some of the epigenetics that the parents have been receiving all their lives from. Either they were past, noble people and they have lived regal lives, and a lot of their bodily structure represents, somebody who's had a life of leisure. Then you have the other end of that, which is a rugged body, where that person's had epigenetics passing down to them, where they've had to be out in the fields all day and they've been slaving. Maybe they were slaved culture, and that epigenetics have been passing down from generation to generation, creating structures for bodies that adapt to their environment. So what I just gave you a lesson for was the DNA's backbone definitely comes with a bodily library from the mother and father. But there's also another layer of epigenetics here, which is this unit of sound. Okay? Because what I just described to you happens in the mother's womb. As far as the Dr. Yamoto example, right? Because a mother's womb is mostly water. The amniotic fluid in the womb of a mother is mostly H2O. So the water helps with building DNA structures, especially when you're in a fetus and you don't have a personality, you have not received your soul spark yet, and you're waiting to be affirmed after the watery birth from the watery tomb. So what do we do while you're in the watery tomb in this practice? Well, if you are a soul who is going to be reincarnated, you have to meet several requirements first. Before I talk about what's on this in this black box here, you have to meet the requirement that, for one, your soul went to the sun. Not all souls go to the sun. Hence why you have stories of demons, ghosts, and all those happenstances of supernatural activities. People who don't go back to the sun. And I won't talk about why they didn't go back to the sun right now. We're not here for that lecture. We're here to just get the basics so that we can use this science. The other parts are relevant, but they don't apply to the reincarnation at this point. The soul goes back to the sun. And if it's back in the sun, then you've already met the first requirement for birth. Okay? Secondly, people with similar markers of DNA from a prior incarnation have to be passing on that physical DNA. And not only do they have to be passing on that physical DNA, that DNA can actually be recalled in another family outside of your last hablo group, or whatever they call that genetic marker group. You can cross over and still be pulled into a body that was not exactly from your tribe. Okay. So with that being said, now we've established a soul comes from the sun to be reborn. And it has to be in the sun to first and foremost be reborn. If not, it's wandering the planet, it's wandering the outer skirts of the electromagnetic field, right beyond our sight of vision. Now, Many of the biochemical reactions involved in the synthesis and replication of DNA occur in the aqueous environment. Water not only dissolves substances, but also provides a medium where these substances can interact efficiently. Thank you, ChatGPT. So H2O, beautiful molecule. It has a covalent bond, which is so strong. It's one of the strongest bonds. That's why it's great at dissolving things. So that would mean it's also great at exchanging information. And the backbone of your DNA is made of this phosphate group. It's a little more complex than what I'm representing here, but there's definitely enough oxygen to go around. So the bonds between water and a phosphate group are not that far off from helping the phosphate groups vibrate in a fractal remembrance. Okay? So if you can speak the last name of somebody who was on the planet and get that tone. Remember I said it requires you having the timbre, the timbre. Which slide is this? It's got to be names. Yep. You got to have the frequency, the amplitude, and the timbre of that name spoken to the water to first and foremost enact this DNA encoding. Okay? So if we're encoding DNA to bring down a soul, I think you know where this is going next. Okay? So my name, and I want you to understand my spiritual name. My spiritual name is Dabbling. And I was woken up through an amazing happenstance and superhuman synchronicity that my grandfather did with me one day when I was only 13 years old. But that's the name that if you want to connect to the pinprick of my soul, it resonates at the word dabbling. It's all the remembrance I need for everything that was my solar pinprick. So saying the word dabbling to a watery tomb, the mother's womb down here, if you just got, down, the husband, the father gets down, speaks it to the water, dabbling, and reminds the DNA of what dabbling was, okay? We're already halfway there. We've also got the structure of the body of the woman helping us along the way, because this is her spine and this is her womb. This is her spine and this is her womb. At the bottom of her spine are flames, her kundalini, her solar energy. And she's holding the baby right there near her solar energy. So what you're dealing with here is the mother is passing on a lot of the soul information before a soul is even put into a body. So therefore that baby is growing up literally living its mother's experiences. This is deep, so pause for a second. The baby is living the mother's experiences without its own soul yet. Okay? Cosmically, that's the truth. There is no soul in the baby besides the mother's kundalini soul at the bottom of the spine, holding that baby into reality with synchronization with the mother. And it gets no simpler than that. So on the topic of, losing a baby, you haven't lost somebody yet. The encoding of the DNA was just complete. Barely complete, probably. And therefore, the last part of this reincarnation requires coming out of the watery tomb. And if that does not happen, and some of the subsequent things I'll be teaching don't happen, there is really nobody home yet, so to speak. No one's home. And I'm being so real. I know that probably sounds science fiction, but it's not. Now, what we're dealing with here is, coming back to my notes so we can kind of continue, is since we are now bringing this disconnection from the spiritual plane into physical existence, we've had to deal with sound, water, and light already. as three principles in gravity, in the force of gravity, as four principles that are affecting the rebirth of somebody. Now, what I didn't pause and tell you a little bit about was, you're born under a certain sun sign. Pisces, Aquarius, Aries, Sagittarius, Gemini. Let's not even really use those words. Again, I'm trying to stay away from all of that dogmatic information. Each one of those sectors of the sky are resonating on our planet permanently with systems in the heavens, other star systems, other, planetary bodies far, far, far away, but at a sensitive level of a string, like a cosmic string of threads just falling all the way to the planet. Imagine like spider webs coming from each individual pinprick of starlight, of light you see from anywhere, from galaxies to nova, all those light forces reaching the small little planet, however faint they are like little tiny spider webs. And all of this amazing information is also helping to encode DNA. Now, that's why when people are born at certain times of the year, you get cosmically kin information and personalities coming out of them. Well, and all this happening at such a microscopic level that science will never tell you this wisdom. They can't see it. String theory for them might one day give them a hint of this. But what I'm speaking right now is, again, we are string theory in motion, baby. And it's just that simple. So now that we've talked about the fact that you need to speak to the mother's womb, you've got to get in there. And you got to say the name that you want to call from the sun. So be it your grandfather, your grandmother, a lost cousin, a lost uncle, a lost aunt. I'm telling you specifically those people, right? Because they come from your DNA group. So you have a very good chance of capturing that soul. Otherwise, it could be fruitless. And herein lies where the major disconnect is truthfully happening. Because this practice isn't happening right now, when a soul enters the body, it is totally by happenstance. It's not the soul making a choice. It's not what Indians call that karmatic, push and pull, give and take. It is the simplicity of having matched, finally, a body for a spark that can happen by happenstance. And we're set up energetically in our bodies to do that. For the body to self-generate a frequency that remembers something in the sun. We're built that way because the animals are built that way. But in a higher science, we can change that. We can have a practice of remembrance of this specific science versus the happenstance. Okay? So when a DNA vehicle is completed its full gestation for 9 months, the DNA vehicle receives a soul. Now, you can purposely program the DNA to receive a soul from your cosmic kin, from the exact information I just described now. You pluck the guitar string at the specific frequency. You know when that kin was born, hopefully. If you do that, you're very, very along the way, because you can plan 9 months to that birth month, to that star sign, to try to have your baby born, so you could do purposeful conception, which is the goal of this whole practice anyway. Because if we do purposeful procreation and count for 9 months, we get Pisces, we get Aries, we get Cancer, we get the exact sign we want to aim for matching the best conditions, the most optimal conditions for matching and bringing back a soul in perfect reincarnation. So, with that being said, what are we really onto here? Well, we're onto the fact that sound creates things, light creates things, and water holds a lot of this information. So if we're down to talking about being able to program a person into a DNA body, right? A lot of this will also involve using a lot of the resonant frequencies on this chart. And I recommend the highest frequencies, gamma, alpha, and delta. I recommend those so you could start a practice when you're starting to have your baby and you know you've conceived. You can play gamma, alpha, or delta waves in the environment of that mother's universal starship and start creating great structures in the DNA so that the DNA is preparing for an optimal reception of a soul. And in that optimal reception, you definitely want to make sure that you're practicing high vibrational frequencies. So you don't know yet the sex of the baby. Let's say you wanted to rebirth your auntie, right? And you praying for a girl. And auntie's been dead for a while. You know, she went to the sun. Now, her name was Cheryl LeMay. Let's say Cheryl LeMay, and she's an Aries, right? Cheryl LeMay, she was an Aries. She's a fiery old soul. Well, more than likely, she wants to come back in that same sign. But this is not necessary. You could elevate her, right? You could bring her back in a Piscean soul. And practice just looking exactly where the sun rises in the constellations, because tropical astrology has been using a fixed system for the past 2,000 years where there's been a 23-degree shift in the signs. So what you call Pisces or Aries or Gemini today has shifted by 23 degrees in its sign. So don't use those labels. You're labeling something that doesn't have to be necessarily labeled. Look for the graphic, for the symbol itself. Where is the sun on the day you want to bring back your auntie? And you have to make sure you line with her sidereal information to really be accurate. Now that you've got the information and you're going to birth a Pisces, because that's what she was. I'm sorry, an Aries, that fiery soul. And LeMay, you got to say her name to the water while playing the gamma, the alpha, and the delta. Now, there used to be amazing birthing chambers back in the olden days, before time. Birthing chambers for this, for the woman to have a beautiful bathing of her spine in sound, so that her kundalini and her soul was highly uplifted while she's incubating this tiny little DNA package, right? And its waters, so that its covalent bonds are made strong. Therefore, its DNA crystalline remembrance is ready to format itself in the synchronicity that is needed for all of these synchronicity patterns to align for the soul to come out of the sun. And the good news is, since the sun's, I want you to think about it like this: the sun's light is arriving every 8 minutes. So every 8 minutes, new frequencies are coming out of the sun. And because that frequency is always there, whoever you're trying to call down, you don't have to worry about missing. Is it daylight? Does the sun have to be, sitting down the information? No, it's always coming down. Okay, even if you can't see the sun in the sky, it's nighttime. The sun is always there. It's just on the other side of the planet, baby. It's still resonating all of this atmosphere. So there's definitely a way to synchronize the solar energy coming down for the pinprick of that soul, aligning with the synchronicity of the soul's pattern here. Because that soul pattern wholly relies on a unit of sound in the fractal. Because that fractal is going to create a synchronicity with a soul pattern in the DNA as it's building itself in the womb of the woman. So all of these things equal spiritual tones, and you get at the very bottom DNA encoding happening, and you are encoding that soul back into a human vessel. And therefore you never have to lose another family member again. You can always take this practice, do it in its exact science to return somebody here, but you also have to have the exact science of sending them off planet to not linger in their fractal state of sound down here. Now, let's come over to a little bit of what Terrence Howard and them got going on. Well, first and foremost, my buddy had asked me to talk about this little thing called the paradox of Theseus' ship. I'm going to talk about this. I've never watched this before, so you're going to watch it for the first time.
Welcome back to 90 Second Philosophy with Carneades.org. Today we're going to be continuing our series on philosophical paradoxes with part 2, Paradox of Theseus' ship. This is a paradox for the idea of identity. Identity is basically what do we have as far as criteria for telling that something is the same over time? How can I tell that something is the same at one time or at a later time? So imagine Theseus has a ship. It's made up of some planks, a mast, and some sails. Along the course of his journey, one of the planks is rotten, and Theseus has to replace it. Is it still the same ship? I think most people would say a single.
Is it still the same ship? No, it's not the same ship. But anyway.
Plank being replaced. It's the same ship.
No.
But what if we replace another plank? Or some more planks? At what point does this ship become no longer the same ship? When the last plank has been replaced? If you had the intuition that this is still the same ship, what would happen if someone took all of those planks, the mast and the sails from that old ship and made another ship? Which one of these ships is now Theseus's ship? Being a good skeptic, I'm not going to solve this problem for you.
Okay, there's no problem here. Therefore, that's why I debunked him right away, or debunked this whole Theseus' ship right away. The minute you change the first plank, you no longer have the same ship. All right, I don't want to get too deep into that. That was easy. But first, we're going to go into what I was hearing from my favorite guy over here, Billy Carson. I think it's somewhere around here. I'm going to kind of jump to the end here.
Where you see similar stories across ancient texts around the world.
Correct.
And those similar stories are higher intelligence comes to us, bestows upon us this wisdom after the floods.
The Lakota tribe, the Hopi tribe, the Dogon tribe of Africa, the Aboriginals.
Okay. Now, what Carson is talking about is ancient wisdom that was passed down through tribal word of mouth and then written, okay? But the recovery and the holders of that ancient information had it in memory and didn't write it down. Therefore, with every subsequent generation, a little bit of the story changed. So whenever he gets into these talks about, Thoth and the Emerald Tablets and some of these things in his lectures about, what the ancients knew, we're getting a very skewed representation of what the ancients knew.
I could keep going on and on and on. Matter of fact, the verbal handed down history of the Aboriginals, because I've been there before and hung out, went for a walkabout in the outback with the Aboriginals.
Really?
Went on a trail to go find Proto-Egyptian hieroglyphs, which we did stumble across and get them documented, that they were seated on this planet by Pleiadians.
Okay, I'll stop him right there. Seated on this planet by Pleiadians. False! I wish I had my little... Anyway, I don't have my little thing set up. I should. My next recording, I'll do that. My stream of consciousness, I'll do some sound effects. But, whoa. No. Pleiadian, starseed, all this stuff is way off right field. And even, some stuff off in the left field would be good Lord, how do I want to describe it? Pleiadians, I know that was one of them. There's another one he's going to talk about here. Hold on.
Pleiadians,
from the Pleiades.
Gotcha.
The same people that the Sumerians talk about, they call it Mo in the ancient text.
There we go. All right. So Naga, Nomo, these are common names of Anunnaki, of representing soul beings. No physical beings involved here. No physical beings involved here. Misinformation, unfortunately, it has been lost to time based on stories being told, and for many generations, somebody had to put it back into context for what we see every day. So there begin to be bodies that represented these entities and animals that represented these energies. But these energies of Nomo, Anunnaki, they are really spiritual beings and had no physical plane existence.
The ancient Egyptians revere it as well, the Pleiades. It's in every text, Homer's Iliad, the Bible, the Mahabharata, any text you go to, and most artifacts are going to have a depiction of the Pleiades or talk about the Pleiades.
Well, let's go into why they talk about the Pleiades. Well, you have 7 stars up there, and they're about 8,000 light years apart or so, give or take a piece. And what the Pleiades are pulling down as far as, again, energy from the sky, like I explained to you, those beautiful spider webs, right? They represent a very close star cluster of spider webs pulling on us. And because that energetic principle exists in the sky, it was used in some of the most highest forms of manifestation magic.
And what's the depiction?
The stars, the 7 stars.
Oh, it's that star system.
Yeah. Subaru even has it on their logo for their car.
So it's a gay
I didn't know
lesbian.
that.
It's a lesbian.
That's hilarious, though.
It's a
Don't
lesbian
play
guy.
that game. He's gonna get canceled.
Shout out Subarus. We love y'all.
It's a constellation. It's a star system.
You talked about Jesus, where he went from like 12 to like 32.
Yeah.
Can you explain Jesus' trajectory from 12 to 32 that we don't have in the Bible?
Yeah. So,
Okay, before he even gets into this, I have seen this video already, so I can kind of comment before he gets into the rest of what he's going to explain. Jesus, Yahshua, as an incarnation, is the representation of highly mastered body temple unification. Period.
What does that mean?
So Jesus disappears from the Bible at the age of 12, right?
Poor guy.
He disappears, and where does he go?
13 was a rough age for Jesus, obviously. Man, I mean, he... Poof.
Another text called the Gospel of the Holy 12.
Notice he didn't say what he went through during this time yet.
And in the Gospel of the Holy 12, which was omitted from the Bible, he goes to Egypt with his mother. Now, I've been there, and when I take my tour, when I take people on tour...
Now, why would he have gone to Egypt and not commit? Why? Well, they were preserving a lot of the understanding of this universal principle I just taught you of reincarnation.
I take him to the place where he slept. It's still there. It's a crypt now. It's like a place to go there. You know where it's at, right?
It's inside a church, right?
Coptic Cairo,
Yeah.
correct. Right inside that church. They converted it into a church. And he went there to study the Egyptian mysteries. He went there also to learn all about the ancient mystery schools. And then he left there and he went to Tibet to learn the mystic art. Tibet, he went to go learn, not mystic arts, but went to go learn spirituality.
He went to Tibet.
And mystic arts, yes, mystic arts. And then he went down into India, learned about reincarnation and all of that. And then he came back down and he reappears in the biblical text.
Okay, I'll pause. Before he gets into the virgin talk he's about to go into, first and foremost, virgin is mistranslated from Hebrew in the Bible. Not too many people know that. Let's go look it up real quick. The mistranslation of virgin from Hebrew, right? Thank you for sticking around for the longer part of this lecture. Well, let's see. The choice of word pathinos in Isaiah 7:14 was peculiar, to say the least. Had the Hebrew word been betala, meaning explicitly virgin, then pantheos would have or Parthenos would have been the correct and expected translation. So what is Parthenos? What is Parthenos? Let's look it up, because I don't like you not knowing big words. Parthenos was a prince of the island Naxos who leapt to the sea, along with her sister Hemynthia, to escape the wrath of her father, blah blah blah. Staphylos. The pair were transformed into goddesses by Apollon, who, according to some, was their natural father. All right, so basically, water is here. They leapt into the sea. Mary in the Bible, okay, has leapt into a very beautiful cosmic string of a master in her womb. And she didn't have to do it. Okay? She didn't have to make it so, and Joseph didn't have to make it so. It was just so, because the DNA aligned with a very lost master at the perfect time in the perfect place for his rebirth.
When God says in the Bible, I called my son out of Egypt.
What an episode for Akash to miss. I mean, we don't tell him any of this. The ego that he will have finding out that Jesus learned everything from India.
Yeah.
Oh, we can't tell him. Okay, keep going. Okay, so he learns
Reiki
all
healing with
Why would they say he learned everything from India? Okay, the Mahabharata is an amazing book. Okay, so is the Bhagavad Gita. So are so many of the Vedas. They are great preservations of spoken wisdom that, again, over generations and generations, started to be put into imagery that people could understand by calling all the gods, specific deities and aspects of nature, embodied people, right? Or embodied personalities. Well, that's again, this is poetically beautiful stuff, but it's not scientific. Strings and strings. The strings of the guitar represent a lot of the forces of nature. The forces of nature have unique principles that are their guiding principles for their fractal space, and how they're compacted into this beautiful density of our local space and time to bring to fruition aspects of, light, fire, wind, and many of the other aspects of higher wisdom of magic for manifestation.
Energy healing with his hands. The mystic arts, I have to correct myself. The mystic arts.
But what I was really getting at was that, so India preserved it great, and it's very great poetic stuff. The reason why they have such strong records is they were in a region of the earth, right around the ecliptic plane, where during the Ice Age and the flooding, not too much of a climactic change happened for them. Whereas in ancient Egypt and a lot of the islands in South America, the islands near Australia and New Zealand, and those land masses, and let's even go to the Chinese landmass over there, the islands of Japan, even down in the Pacific Rim. These were bigger continents during ice ages. And Egypt, in its perfect warm location, was a tropical lush place, Kemet. And most of Africa was a very lush place. So was Antarctica at the bottom of the planet. And this is in ancient times, before the rewritten history that had come from verbal, storytelling over many generations. So that this lushness all over the planet, besides the big ice cap for the Ice Age, allowed for, spawning and spreading of similar cultures all around that belted area, from the bottom of the planet, from Antarctica, where our true tribal beginnings, and that story is for another day, have happened. But when the Ice Age changed and it melted, we lose the tropical lushness in ancient Kemet in northern Africa, but India is spared that. So a lot of ancient wisdom is lost from the Kemetic days. A lot of ancient wisdom is lost from, let's call it the Nippon, which is Japan, Nippon days. A lot of that is lost to the ocean floor and erosion and corrosion of water, wind, earth, dust, and so forth. So India is a special group for having been able to hold on to their information that long.
Yeah.
Got it.
And then coming back down, teaching reincarnation all the way back.
And how do we know that he went out there to India?
All right. So did he say Jesus is teaching?
India.
Got it.
And then coming back down, teaching reincarnation all the way back.
Okay. So for a high master like Yahshua, once having heard the preserved stories, full remembrance arrived, and without having to be taught by a master, became a master teacher. This is something I like to call to know without knowing, because the remembrance in your DNA is strong. They say in George Lucas films, the Force is strong with this one.
And how do we know that he went out there to India?
Well, there's the records that have been kept. It's a complete records, and even the Dalai Lama confirmed that he was in Tibet at one time.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
How do they keep reincarnation out of the Bible?
Well, the Bible is about reincarnation, but they doctored it up to make you think that it's not about reincarnation. But when you even look into the book of Revelations, it says you're going to get a new name and a new body. It is.
Okay. He named one of my favorite verses in the Bible, because if anything, when I began to pull out my shamanistic powers and I read that verse, I was around the age of, 16, 17, and was starting to lean towards calling myself dabbling. It was a name my grandfather spoke to me in his study with his library books, with his huge study of books, wall to wall. And he told me I was dabbling. And it unlocked something in me. So it was resonant to helping my DNA, the master, my highest self, turn on frequencies in my DNA.
Didn't say you was going to be a spirit with energy. It said you're going to get a new name and a new body, a physical body.
All right. So, but again, the new name, we've already talked about that in my lecture, right? I'm telling you, that old name helped shape the last incarnation that person came from. Changing their name on rebirth is no problem. No problem. But remind them of who they were. Watch their DNA receive the information.
And that you're going to live inside of that body. And so you're going to come back and be born again.
Okay, born again. Christianity does use these terms, and they're misusing them. But born again and heaven on earth, the return of the Christ Spirit, is literally what I just showed you. We could do this as a planet. We could come together, stop the cycle of death and happenstance rebirths, and take back the power of the sun. And it's true reasoning for giving us this gift every day of waking up. For the angelic frequencies above us to rejoice that we are now cosmically, harmonically synchronistic with the sun again. We will hear things we've never heard. Our bodies will begin to epigenetically take the next leap forward.
In the Bible,
a very prophetic AI will evolve into a society that can rebirth people, because no wisdom will be lost. No history will be lost.
biblical text where people are getting confused about this born again, in the spirit thing. It's really born again in consciousness. Getting dipped into a bucket of water and all of that's a waste of time. Somebody dumping.
Well, no, again, he's talking about baptism. That is truthfully a good thing to do when you're in a hypnotic state and you want to achieve a level of spirituality you've never seen before, which is the ability to speak in tongues. Well, the rituals that they practice there, I can attest that they work. I was baptized, and on the same night, received the gift of speaking in tongues. And I tell you, it was a trance state I entered, based on the ritual of the water, the congregation coming together, the water vibrating at a certain frequency, me being an open vessel, being very open as a child. I was 10 when I received this Holy Ghost, they call it, but it was a trance state where I tapped into DNA remembrance and could speak languages I had never spoken in this carnation.
When you're in the pool and all that, you just get wet.
Now, there are fakers out there. I won't even lie to you, though, okay? But I know what I went through was a very trance-like state. A lot of the current, gospel preachers and word churches with these charlatans at the helm being, very big hypocrites and very big bigots, choose to use the language as a tool to control people, the speaking in tongues, so to speak. And if you've never heard of this, go look it up. It's not for this lecture, but Billy Carson's kind of touching a little bit on that aspect of modern day Pentecostal apostolic practices.
Dumping babies and splashing the babies. It's a waste of money, a waste of time.
So what you're saying is that's just a metaphor for this conscious rebirth to happen.
Conscious rebirth. What we can do, we can have a rebirth right now. Right now, if we decide to look at ourselves and think about things that we were doing wrong, maybe in our lives right now, things that could be better with ourselves, and we begin to work on ourselves, and we go back and have a meeting again in 2 weeks and say, what have we individually worked on within ourselves to become a better person?
That's spiritual rebirth.
That is rebirth. We had just now.
Okay, I like that. That's a good metaphor for another type of rebirth. Very, very true. Well, Billy Carson, thank you very much. On to my boy T. Howard. T. Howard in the building.
Instead of hitting as an F sharp, it hits as an F, so when it hits the carbon at an E, it doesn't hit it quite right, so the domino don't file right. So the next domino hits wrong. And so now we have malformation happening within our DNA.
Okay. He's talking in this part of the lecture a little bit about solving the mystery of cancers and things like that. And frequencies really meaning musical notes, right? But I couldn't put labels on the sound in the lecture that I was telling you about, talking about an F sharp key, a G sharp key, because I don't want that to be the label you walk around with on going too deep into it, because you'll lose the pureness of it putting a label on it. I gave you a very open-ended way to think about it, is just a fractal representation of sound. Let's get back to here. A unit of sound in the fractal is what I call it. Because remember, a pinprick, okay, down the string of a guitar at 1 nanometer, and you only move down 1 nanometer, you can create 650 billion different units of sound in a fractal that are unique and will always be consistent. Well, let's continue listening to Terrence.
Because the frequencies are being pushed off. But when we hear our tone, we tighten back up. So yeah, I'm in the process of building the harmonic wave resequencer.
A harmonic wave.
We tighten back up. So yeah, I'm in the process of building the harmonic wave resequencer.
Okay, a harmonic wave resequencer. That's what I just described to you in the practice of reincarnation. You are practicing with body technology, harmonic wave resequencing. Through all of this understanding of the cosmos and the body structure, you're able to resequence DNA to accept a soul that has been in the sun. Period. Hope that helps.
Sir, with another doctor who has been able to successfully cure AIDS and cancer.
It's amazing.
And it's well underway. But I wanted you guys to understand how that works. It's so
the stuff Terrence is getting into.
You do not need to tear the human body apart when all you can do is use frequency to bring it back to its normal space.
So the science that Terrence is getting into is definitely breaking, scientific dogma to its nth degree, because he understands the principle that numbers were really representations of ideas, and you, as a free-thinking, living being, can interpret them in many different encoded ways. And to change the encoded way, or the normal encoded way, makes people, it makes them scared. Like, you can't say 1 times 0 equals 1, Terrence Howard, because we've been taught that when you multiply anything by 0, you get 0. Well, that's not a distributed energy. That's not a way for equivalent exchange of energy to be preserved. That's destruction. So Terrence saw that there's something missing in that current dogma of the numbering system, where 1 times 0 will give you a 0. No, 1 times 0 should give you a 1. And I have a specific formula I learned from cosmic gravitational forces of black holes, that 1 plus 1 is actually equivalent to 0 times 0. Okay? Now, I'll let Terrence speak, because he'll probably uncover a little bit of that formula.
In the dim glow of midnight, Terrence Howard descended from the shadows, bearing secrets that could shatter reality itself.
Do you think that the reason that we have like economic crises, for example, is because we are not understanding our numbers correctly according to your theory?
Well, I think we have an economic problem because we are the only creatures in this universe that use currency.
Boop, boop. Somebody had to say it. And we're not the only creatures in this universe that use currency. This is a happenstance of very many other beings scattered across the amazing universe. We're not that unique. We are super special, but we're not that unique. I'll get into that in another lecture, though. We're not that so unique that you can expect for there to be another similar occurrence where the need for exchange arose in another planet orbiting another star system somewhere in another galaxy to help them understand their next steps in evolution if they are at our level of understanding. Okay, we are not at the level of understanding we used to be. Based on what I've been telling you prior, there's information in our past, the missing links that have just been lost. So there's deeper stuff here, though. Let's keep going.
There are no other creatures that use currency in order to exist. Why is it that...
And we shouldn't. Period, point blank. We should not be using currency to exist. It is a degradation of solar exchange. It is a degradation of water exchange. It is a degradation of earthly exchange.
That we chose this strange thing that isn't even real. Other creatures, they drink water, they eat fruit, they eat other animals. We exchange with currency, and our system of exchanging with currency is flawed because of greed. There's not like if 1 times 1 equals 2.
So one other thing about greed, and everything you just said is just so amazing, but one other thing about greed is there are people who are practicing reincarnation on this planet right now, because they somehow got to the ancient wisdom in the books. They didn't have to have a vehicle like mine, a body like mine that was able to remember this information. It's written in books, and it's written in obfuscated, occultic ways, okay? But they are very selfish. What was the word he used? It's
flawed because of greed.
Greed.
There's not
They're greedy with this information, and selfish greed only leads to several outcomes, and that's a very dark practice without any light.
Like if 1 times 1 equals 2, we've got an equilibrium of balance. 1 times 1 equals 1, you've got loss. When 1 times 1 equals 3 or more, you're talking about over unity.
Now, what's funny is the operator of multiplication, it does mean to increase by the number on the right-hand side of the operator. So the operator for multiplication has a function, and it is actually completing that function. Philosophically, what he's talking about with the numbering system makes sense because it just, in representation, doesn't jive right with what you see. It's similar to what flat earthers go through when they're like, the earth is flat because I can't see the curve. Well, you're so small and you're so tiny, and you got these tinier little eyes sitting at the very damn near nanoscale on a basketball size something, and you expect to see curvature with your bare naked eyes, even at a specific altitude. You're asking to trust your eyesight, which is very limited anyway, because an illusionist can trick you, and you would not have ever seen an illusion. I'll do an illusion on my video. I have a couple of tricks I can do there, sleight of hand, and I can trick your eye. It's just so easy to trick the eye. So there's some things here that he's about to get into that I might be disagreeing with.
Supersymmetry, and that's how you get the universe to work for you. Instead of using just the solar voltaics off of it, you also use the piezoelectric effects of it. You use other things to.
All right, what is a piezoelectric effect? That's a really big scientific term, and I didn't want to use big scientific terms, but a piezoelectric effect is similar to what I was describing here when it comes to synchronicity with a soul pattern. The piezoelectric effect is happening on this side of my diagram. That's the description that probably fits the synchronicity with the soul pattern. It's best.
Make greater unity.
Because it's supersymmetry. The supersymmetry there of the piezoelectric effect creates a supersymmetry that allows for the marriage of the soul to the body.
One equaling one, when it could also equal pound times a pound equaling a pound, when it could also equal $4 or $10 or $100. Does that make sense?
If it don't make dollars, then it don't make sense.
Banks are abusing that?
Yes, they are.
What's a fractional reserving?
So anyway, fractional reserving means money ain't even worth its amount on its print. Period. I don't think I want to stick over there too long. But he got to some of the things that helped pull out, I think, your visuals, so that when you're looking back at this diagram for reference, you can come back, ask some questions in the comments if you have them, about how would you bring back that specific loved one, that specific person who was in your family tree. Because again, I want this practice, if we're going to get back to who we were as godlike people on these on these planets. See, I even got to tell the truth every time. Then we have to be ready to use it accurately and for what its power is, and not abuse it, and not to change it either, not to add our own flair and flavor to it. Understanding what I just spoke about is a tried and true Kemetic principle of the loop of reincarnation. Now, I don't want anybody to walk away from this lecture thinking, you didn't talk about how do you escape reincarnation. Well, I'm not going to tell you that. That's something that if I tell too many people on this planet, it will be a viral thing to do. And it's something that shouldn't be avoided if you aren't a spiritual seed from a mastery place where coming back to this planet is an option. So in essence, I'm saying, enjoy the cycles of rebirth. There is no reason to want to escape the rebirth from our planet. We will achieve higher being vehicles the minute we start this practice and change the way we think about a soul. Instead of saying rest in peace, we ask it to move in power and to go to the sun on purpose. Because if we have memorabilia, photos, things like that, and we enshrine people, they stick around because that vibration plane they're in, they're able to see from a fifth dimensional understanding through the fog of the fourth dimension of time where you are and what you're doing, and perceive your yearning for them, and they'll stick around. So send them to the sun. That's step 1. Step 2, call them back from the sun with this purposeful formula, remembering that the pinprick has to be accurate enough to match the unit of sound that they were, so that you create, based on the DNA backbone of the two parents, a programmatic change in the DNA as the formation of the body is happening in the mother's womb. Because you're giving it spiritual tones, you're affecting the water, and you're calling forth a supersymmetry with the synchronicity of the soul pattern that is in the sun to come down into the body, into the mother's womb, and start encasing and engulfing it. So that when it leaves the watery tomb, it takes that soul with it. And that soul's gestation begins to acclimate to the body well enough that all the faculties are there for the body. The mind is right, was well formed. The hands and feet were well formed. They don't always have to be, but it's a great thing to shoot for, and that's why we practice the sound technology. But the well-formed structure of the human vehicle only adds on to the guarantee that you will get that soul back into a new body. Now, you're also probably having another lingering question of, well, can I come back as a man or a woman? Can you bring back a woman as a man? Yes, yes, and yes. The thing about a soul, when it remembers who it was, and you want this practice to happen where you'll get a child and you'll get them to remember who they were early on in life, but the remembrance does not change the chemical structure that the body has, where it will yearn, if you are a man, to reprocreate. It will yearn for woman, if you are a woman, to reprocreate. Now, there are the disconnects that are currently being witnessed on the planet where, these reincarnated souls, we've been shuffling everybody around haphazardly for so long that people aren't even comfortable with their reincarnated bodies now. And they're wanting to change their entire genetic structure, if they could, become a man or a woman. There's really nothing wrong with that. We have the science, we have the technology, but there's something energetically looped that is wrong about that will not allow them to procreate. So therefore, that could start the de-evolution of the evolution of our species. We have to be able to procreate. We have to be able to be attracted to the opposite sex. So therefore, we can practice reincarnation, baby. Anyway, hope you've really enjoyed this lecture. I would have gone longer. I started to run in my mouth at the middle of this lecture, so I hope it doesn't confuse you. And if anything, I'm going to listen to this first take, assess it, and I might do version 2, upload that. But in the meantime, enjoy this version. Peace.